Welcome to the Empire Real Estate Podcast. On this episode, we have Casey McKeown, who was able to sell 33 deals his first full year as an agent. From there, he ramped his sales up to 74 units, and then he started buying rental properties. So he's going to share how he amassed a portfolio of over $5 million in real estate. And towards the end of the video, we're going to share how he was able to set up a luxury short-term rental in Broken Bow, Oklahoma, where he is enjoying an additional stream of revenue and income as a real estate agent. So we're going to dive into this episode. You're going to get some great wealth building ideas and strategies. And Casey's going to share his story on how he was able to build his own wealth as a real estate agent and through real estate entrepreneurship. Let's dive right into it. Welcome to Coffee with Closers. In this series, we interview top real estate producers that are out there making big things happen in the real estate industry. That way you can learn from their failures and their big wins so you can start winning more in your real estate business. So Casey, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, welcome. Appreciate it.
Of course, 100%. So Casey, you've done some pretty incredible things with your real estate career. And I just wanted to have you on to kind of share, what you've done, how you become a top producing agent, and also how you built wealth and built a portfolio of about $5 million in real estate. So jumping into it first, tell us a little bit more about how you got started and then, your past before real estate. What were you doing and then what made you decide to get into this field?
Yeah, I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I don't have any history in business, owning a business. None of my family members, coerced me into getting into real estate. It was one of those situations in life where I had a relationship end, and at that time I had a relationship that I essentially had built out a future, assuming that it was going to be similar to, and that did essentially didn't no longer occur. So I found, and when I say I stumbled into real estate, this story is the true definition of stumbling into it. I was literally on Facebook and I saw a friend from my high school days posting that he was attending some event. Now, the event specifically was how to earn $50,000 in a month. And this was someone that could barely graduate high school. And I was like, this has got to be the biggest scam. And I got to let him know, like, hey, stupid, don't go to this event. Well, I did a little creeping like we all do on social media. And I found out that he was the one speaking. He was the person hosting the event. So that really intrigued me because I was like, what the hell am I doing wrong if this guy barely graduated high school and he's making $50,000 a month? And here I am with, a master's degree in education and a bachelor's in mathematics, and I'm going to be making 52,000 a year. So I reached out to him, and he basically put me on the trajectory and path towards, where I am today, I guess 7 years later. But it all stemmed, his biggest advice was pick up Rich Dad Poor Dad, jump on Bigger Pockets, which is a real estate investment page. And at that point, I very much have an addictive personality. And when I find something that I like to do, I engulf myself in it. And that's what I did. I watched podcast after podcast. I listened to as many YouTube videos as I could. Very much nowadays, I listen to music when I'm driving, but then it was just, constant, podcasts or videos while I was driving, wherever I needed to drive. At the time I was a high school teacher. It was my first year. And like you said, Pick Up Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is a book that changed my life. But even my high school athletes that I was coaching, when I was, at a wrestling meet on a Saturday, they were giving me crap for sitting in the stands before the meet because I was sitting there reading a book. They're like, Coach, what are you doing reading a book? Just teasing me, whatnot. But some of those students and athletes still follow me on social media today, and my life has changed. So that set me up on a trajectory to really first and foremost understand what passive income was, understand that, hey, my mom's been teaching middle school PE for 35 years. I don't want to be, and I was in my first year, I don't want to be doing this for the next 40 years of my life. My mom actually just told me about a month ago, she's finishing up year 39 and finally going to retire. But even then, she's not where she wants to be financially. So I could never imagine working 40 years and not being where I want to be financially, or be stuck in a career that, I can't stand for 40 years. So it all started initially with the game of real estate investing. And then I figured I'd get my real estate license to kind of help on the side. wound up moving to Dallas after that first year of teaching. I took a teaching job in Dallas for my second year, and got licensed probably the first week or two in Dallas, as far as officially being licensed and being a realtor. Got my first investment property within the first 60 days of being in Dallas, and that's really when, you know, my business started to take off, my investment portfolio started to grow, and I've just devoted the last 6 years of my life to real estate through and through, and you know, I've sold over $125 million in real estate, and I own north of 5 million in my, you know, real estate portfolio.
Wow, that's amazing. So basically you were doing a 9 to 5 job. You came across this guy that had to be, doing pretty well in real estate. Now, was he like doing fix and flips, or was he
Yeah.
more of a buy and hold investor?
Yeah, so he the title of his little Facebook thing that I had come across was wholesaling. So
Uh,
he actually has I believe his dad is in some way or another involved in real estate. So he had kind of a right-hand man to teach him the ropes and show him what to do. Now this is back up in my home state of Washington. I'm down in Texas now. So it was really more of the just, kicking me down the hill to get the ball started as far as rolling down the hill. He didn't really help me beyond just advising, that first step. But as soon as that first step was taken, and I'm someone that is analytical. I cannot stand sitting down and reading a book. I hadn't read a book probably in 10 years, and I picked up Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I couldn't put the damn thing down. So, I think I read probably close to 8 to 10 different books over the course of the next 3 to 6 months, and I'm not a reader, but I was hooked.
that book is incredible. Rich Dad Poor Dad is like a total mindset shift, and it could really change your life. So
The
that's
crazy thing about it was, this was even if we rewind a couple years to 2000. So I first got started in 2016, but I moved to Texas in 2015. Even before I knew anything outside of HGTV, I was like, hey, I'm a college student, but I have some military money. I want to buy a house. I didn't know how to buy a house. I had no idea that you had to like qualify and all these things. But I was like, what if I buy a house and rent out the rooms? Maybe I won't have to pay a mortgage. I already had that kind of mindset. I just needed some kind of guidance moving forward to get me there, I guess you could say.
That makes sense. Okay. So now I'm curious. So you said he started this guy that you ran into was a wholesaler, and then you went down the rabbit hole of listening to bigger markets, reading some books. And what made you decide to go down the real estate agent path versus becoming a wholesaler?
Honestly, I was planning to teach for 3, 5, 10 years and kind of transition eventually out of teaching once I got burnt out. But I only taught 2 years because just business absolutely exploded. Obviously I was hungry, right? I was making, I think it probably took me 4 months to do my first transaction. But that 6th month after being licensed, I made half a year's worth of teacher salary in 1 month. And that's really when things started to kind of click with like, why am I working 60 hours a week? Because again, I was a coach as well. I was, there before school started, and I was there after school ended. So not your traditional just teacher, but I was a teacher and a coach. And I'm like, if I give myself that extra 60 hours, I'm going to have a lot more flexibility, a lot more freedom. And I certainly can make $4,000 a month in real estate, because that's what I was making teaching. So as much as I hated to, I had to give my coach notice probably around February or March, saying, hey, I'm not going to be coming back next year. And, jumped into, I guess, the deep end. But, and this is what I educate a lot of people on too. The issue that they do when they first get their license is they think, based off of all the success that they see on social media, that they can just get their real estate license and immediately find success. And even me, it took me 5 months to close my first transaction. But I had a full-time job to cover my butt in the interim until I built my business up enough to be able to leave. Some people it's a year, some people 3, 5. It just happened a lot quicker with me, that I couldn't say no, right? Like I had planned to teach many more years than I actually did. But with where business, had gone, I couldn't say no. I had essentially found a niche, which was investing, and I was in a good market in the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas, where rental properties, people were wanting to invest in this area. And at the time I was being told you need to list homes, otherwise you're not going to last in the market. And I think so it was after that first 6 months of being licensed, the new calendar year hit. So I wound up teaching for the first 5 months of that year. But I think I did so half the year full time, half the year the first half was part time because I was still teaching. I did 33 deals in that first 12 months, but 32 of them were buyers.
Wow.
Now the benefit there is, now I am, year, I guess technically 7. A lot of those buyers from the first 3 years of being licensed are now double end deals where I'm, listing their home and having them purchase another. So it becomes a lot easier to keep my business afloat and moving forward when I don't even need to, I've got to keep up with past clients, but one past client turns into 2 deals this year.
Wow, that's incredible. 33 deals in your first full year. That's those are big numbers.
Yeah. I didn't really have I tell people a lot of people don't see, where I was the first couple years in real estate. They see where I am now, which can be a little bit frustrating because I don't come from money. I don't come from, passed down generations of success. Like I said, I don't have any family members that have made any, I guess my sister's an attorney, a divorce attorney back home, and she does well for herself. But I didn't have any connections. I didn't have a check written from dad to help me out to start. I truly built this business from the ground up in a state and a city that I'm not even from. So obviously I take pride in that, but it was 3-4 years of giving up a social life for, the growth that I was able to get. It was 3-4 years of never going out. It was up at, I set my alarm for most days outside of weekends for 3:15, 3:30 in the morning to get to the gym, a little after 4 o'clock, to get my day started by 6:30 or 7 when I got back from the gym and breakfast ate. A little bit more relaxed now that I've found the success that I've had. But those are a lot of the moments that unless you've been following my journey for the last 7 years, you probably don't see.
That makes a lot of sense. So it really sounds like it's a lot of discipline, but what action steps did you take moving into a new market where you didn't really know too many people, it sounds like, to build something where you're selling 33 in your first year?
Yeah, so it's funny because there's a story that I have with my videographer probably 3 or 4 years ago when I first brought him on. I always thought I was an introvert, meaning that I wasn't, I technically still think I am in a sense. But it's weird because I'm what they call, a social media baby, where, as soon as social lives became a thing, MySpace came out, I think my sophomore year in high school, junior year in high school. So I've been able to hide behind a screen, for the majority of my all of my adult life and my teenage years. Now I've been able to leverage that from a business standpoint to, I don't want to call someone that doesn't know who I am. I don't want to knock on someone's door and have a door slammed in my face. I don't want to be rejected. I guess at the end of the day, that's really what it stems from, because this is getting a little personal, but for a lot of my life, I've been rejected from women. So the fact of the business side of things, when you get into business and get rejected from a client or potential clientele, it stings like it stings when a woman rejects me, in my past. So instead of that, and this is kind of like dating, I can relate it to dating apps where, like, if I swipe right and I match, then I know that person swiped right on me. We have that initial connection that I know there could at least potentially be a conversation, right? But if she swipes left and I swipe right, we'll never match and I'll forget about it. It'll be like it never happened. I never faced that rejection face to face. So social media, when it comes to building my business, I was able to, I guess, not necessarily hide, but I was able to leverage, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, whatever kind of platform I could potentially build an audience on. I was intentional and purposeful in terms of like, hey, if I meet someone, I'm adding them on my Facebook or Instagram. Hey, if I'm going to a real estate conference, I'm trying to follow people on social media, trying to build not just my brand, but an audience on social media enough to where, I think across all platforms, I'm pushing close to 100,000 people that I have the ability to put out content to. And you just never know when you could put out, I've got a YouTube video that's closing in on 100,000 views. You just never know when, you put out a video or a picture or a post or whatnot, and it gets seen by, you know, hundreds of thousands. I've had TikToks that get millions of views. But that's where it all stemmed from, was being consistent on social media and kind of just being an open book. I think social media very much is like, oh, look at my grand lifestyle and all the good things that are happening in my life. And I've been very adamant about posting, for lack of better terms, the shitty things that happen in life. And I feel like I get a lot more true connections and relatability when I'm sitting here saying, hey, I'm struggling with this, but I'm able to come back and still do this, kind of thing.
That makes sense. Okay, so it sounds like a lot of your clients come from organic social media, like inbound attraction based marketing.
Yeah, I mean, I very seldom find myself out at a bar. Okay, I never do. I don't go out. A majority of the connections that I have are connecting me in some sense, whether it be an agent to agent referral, or, sending me a client that I help buy or sell, whether it's someone on Bigger Pockets looking to invest, whether it's someone who follows me on Instagram who wants to buy their first house. And the thing is once it starts to grow, it really starts to grow. So once you get enough transactions under your belt, like I've got the second largest transaction that I've ever put under contract this past weekend. That was from a past client, and that past client has referred me now what is my number two and my number three largest transaction I've ever done in real estate. And that past client I helped, I think, about 2 years ago. And she's continuing to and will continue to send me business for, as long as she's living in and enjoying Texas.
That's incredible. So it sounds to me like it's heavily referral based, and you're kind of leveraging that through social media. So
Yeah, it initially though, I mean, obviously it's gotten to that point now, 6, 7 years into the business, but initially it was just like, how many people can I get in front of? Right. So, how many conversations can I have about real estate? Now, I don't want to be knocking on doors and I don't want to be talking to strangers at the grocery store. So what do I have? I have social media. So if I know you, I'm going to add you. If I have heard your name and you're a friend of a friend, I'm going to add you. If you're an agent that I met at a conference, I'm going to add you. If I saw you on stage, I'm going to add you. If I'm going to follow you, whatever it may be. And I'm going to be intentional with the relationship that I try to build. I can't have. I mean, I don't know how long I would have to spend to have 100 conversations, door knocking or cold calling. You probably could relatively easily over the phone, but I can tell you, there's days where I have, through Instagram and Facebook DMs, texts, calls, with all that combined, it's not difficult to have 100 conversations in a day. Especially if I'm hungry in my early days of trying to build those relationships and whatnot. I don't necessarily have to be doing that every day now, with where my business is at, but I can tell you, I was doing anything and everything I could in those, first 3 years in real estate to generate business.
that makes sense. Okay. So outside of social media, is there anything else that you do to generate this kind of result?
I mean, truth be told, a majority, 99% of my business is solely through social media. Now, it maybe indirectly, meaning, for instance, I may have someone reach out to me on YouTube that needs to buy, sell, or invest in another state. Now, I'm not personally going to be helping them, but I'll refer them to another agent in another state, and vice versa. I've had TikToks go viral and I've had people reach out, me posting on TikToks a little bit more personal about my personal life, but I've had people reach out because I am a realtor in the Dallas Fort Worth area saying, hey, I need a realtor in Vegas. I need a realtor in Washington, whatever it may be, and refer them. So, I would say it's mostly social media.
That's super important. Okay. So basically you got your career off the ground pretty quick. 33 sales came in pretty fast. And then from there, what kind of transpired past that?
Think the first year I did, or first like 6 months, it was like I got licensed in July, didn't do a deal till November, and no, end of October I did 2 deals. One was like a tear down, and then I did 5 deals in December. So I did 7 deals, I think, my first year, first 6 months of being licensed. Then the next year is when I did 33, then I did 50, then I did 74. So I just continued to build it up and leverage any potential community I could. So for instance, my brokerage was growing at a rapid pace at that time, to where the agent to agent referrals within the brokerage was a good opportunity to pick up new clients. And then on top of that too, I'm part of Tom Ferry coaching. I knew that the relationship with the agents within my coaching organization, I could pick up agent to agent referrals. So I had my brokerage, I had Tom Ferry, I had social media, all of these things going for me, where agents just as, and I value relationships with agents just as much as I value the relationships with my clients. Because they continue to send me business and keep me in business. And I think it may have been 2020, or maybe 2021. Like half of my business was agent to agent referrals. Now the beauty with agent to agent referrals and knowing agents all over the country is, typically speaking, which the particular client I was just mentioning, I paid an agent a referral for that transaction that referred me to this client. That client is the one I just mentioned, who has sent me the number 2 and 3 largest transaction that I've ever done, and I didn't have to pay a referral fee in that sense. So that one transaction has turned into 2 very large transactions for my market, and a higher end listing that I'm going to be listing in the next month or two. So that relationship is, again, something I'm going to sustain for many years to come. And it wouldn't have been plausible, or, wouldn't have even come about if I didn't have that relationship with that agent.
So agent to agent relationship. So it sounds like you got to 74, you had some really good success. And then at what point did you decide to kind of build a team, a real estate team? I know you
Yeah,
did. And
yeah, that's a story in itself. So I have learned more lessons when it comes to building a real estate team than anything else. First and foremost, if anyone does watch this and is a realtor themselves looking to grow a team, do not build a team based around your friends. And that was my issue. I had 3 past clients, and I think in terms of just being relatable to, I did 4 years in the Marine Corps. I've worked in corporate America. I've been a small business owner and tried to grow a business. Like, I can relate to a lot of different people from all different cultures and communities, and I also am a transplant to Texas, which a lot of people are moving to Texas. So there's just a lot of ability to relate to clients. And this happened with these past clients, where they were like, hey, let me get my real estate license to become a realtor too. And that was my demise, about a year after that. But I began late 2021. I brought those 3 people in, which were my past clients / friends. And then I wanted to provide them with an opportunity, meaning I wanted to give them an office. I wanted to give them leads. I wanted to give, because I knew that, like, hey, if they become successful, then I'm just going to reap the rewards of their success as well. The downside is, come probably early summer of 2022, I was in over my head in terms of expenses. I was no longer profitable. I was spending more on a monthly basis, far more than I was making from the agents, because the agents outside of one agent were not finding any success. I was trying to bring on additional agents that, beyond that, I think I got up to 8 or 9 licensed agents on my team. I had 4 staff members I was paying full time to be employed with us. And there was just a significant amount of overhead. And then I had my top agent, who was really keeping me afloat, close 5 deals in 1 month. Now, all 5 of those deals were leads that I gave him. And he thought that it would be best if he left the team, because he assumed that, paying half his commission for closing 5 deals wasn't worth it. So he stepped away and left the team. And at that point, I don't have any, majority of the income that I'm generating from the team is gone. So I tore it all down. Probably by October of 2022, I had a business manager left and a videographer, no agents on my team. Now, fast forward to 2023, I am ecstatic that I made the decision when I did. Depending on circumstances, I could potentially not even be in the business anymore if I tried to hold on to growing a team just from the sheer amount of expenses that I incurred. So I feel like everything happened for a reason. I'm far more profitable this year than I was last year. I think my team cost me my team made me about 150K last year in gross commission income, but they cost me over 400,000. So
Wow.
I was pulling about $250,000 out of my pocket to cover my team's expenses. Um,
Wow.
but needless to say, with the income this year potentially being, and I'm on pace for, if you remove the team contribution, which was a negative return on what they cost me, I'm about on par with what I made last year. Just way more profitable. I'm saving that $400,000 that I was stuck spending last year.
Wow. Okay. So with your team, did you have like an office space and all that stuff?
Yeah, so the just to run through some of the larger expenses, I had um 4 staff members that combined um probably was 200K a year. And then you've got um the office space, which was roughly about $7,000 a month. It was a brand new office space that I remodeled, and we occupied 2 of the units. So you do some quick math there. That's $84,000 there, so almost 300,000 just off of salary and office space. And then on top of that, I was paying $10,000 a month in Zillow leads. So now you tack on $120,000 a year in Zillow leads. So now you're up to 420, plus all the miscellaneous expenses that I had as far as paying for get-togethers, paying for client events, paying for all the other necessary stuff. It gets close to about 450K. And the total GCI that I was generated from my team last year was about 150 if I'm being generous. So a lot of what I was generating as far as income was being poured right back into keeping my team afloat. And then I also had to furnish my office space, which furnishing, what was it, 2,600 square feet of brand new office space was not cheap. And just not a good last year as far as profitability. Had to make some tough decisions, but those decisions have gotten me where I am today, and I'm super blessed and thankful to be where I am now. Nearing the closer to the end of 2023 now. About a year ago is when all this happened.
Wow. So basically, you wanted to start a team. You figured maybe it was an extra extension of leverage. You would be able to build this thing that operated not without you. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into it, but from the outside view, agents think that that's the next step, and they can just kind of leverage their way and actually, build something that kind of runs without them in a sense. But I think a lot of agents don't realize a lot of the hurdles that they run into when starting a team. There's a lot of moving pieces. You're dealing with independent contractors, a lot of expenses, a lot of accountability, and you know, based on that, just aside from the profit percentage part, were you surprised at how much work actually went into, attracting agents, training agents, all that kind of stuff?
I definitely got thrown the bone that, like, hey, the next thing you got to do to be successful is build a team. So just like everyone else, I did it. But I also was very open with my lack of success in building a team. And you'd be surprised how many DMs I got last year saying, hey, I'm dealing with the very same thing that you're dealing with right now. Because it's not profitable for very, very few people. It's not profitable. So I went back to square one, and the thing was, I wanted to build a team to be able to take a step back and maybe just live the dream of having these people that work for me and make me money, and I don't have to work, right? Like the passive income. It's what drew me to real estate from get-go. But another opportunity within my brokerage opened up in terms of being able to grow passive income, and that was true passive income, as well as, for me, I say this humbly, but it's not hard for me to close a sales transaction in real estate now. Now, it took me 4 or 5 months to get my first transaction under my belt, but like I said, I've built enough relationships in the industry over the last 6 or 7 years that I could work probably a quarter of what I work right now and live a very comfortable life with the sales volume. But for me, it's, always about, trying to continue to better my life and better the future that I want to have. Um, but it all, during this time too, I was growing my real estate portfolio, like I said, up to about $5 million in real estate. I was growing my team with the hope to build my team out and generate passive income through there. And then I also was generating passive income through revenue share at Real Brokerage. So those three legs were kind of the pillars to financial freedom for me. But I learned pretty quickly. I was kind of shown otherwise as far as growing a real estate team, that I was having to be at the office every single day at 8 a.m. Now I work majority of the time from home. I had to be on call for 8 or 9 different people that could have questions for me throughout the day, and they may not even wind up closing a transaction. I also have to deal with motivating and keeping other people engaged and interested in finding success in the business, which is easy for me to do, but it's very hard to control the emotions and the desire coming from someone that's not yourself. I have no ultimate control. If they want to show up at the office, they can. If they don't, they don't. But I can tell you right now, you're only going to have as much success as you're willing to put in. So
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. There are all those pieces that you mentioned, and it's tough because at the end of the day, it's you can't control the actions of every single person. You just can't. And at the end of the day, the hard part about being having a team is that you're on the hook for all those expenses, no matter what happens. If you
yeah,
close 10 deals and you're profitable, that's great. You still have the expenses. If you close 0 deals that month, you still have the expenses. So you have to kind of eat the bullet every single time, and that's the hard part.
yeah, yeah. And like I said, I was starting to see some success from one of the individuals on my team, and as soon as they found a little bit of success, they opt, to leaving. Now the funny thing is karma is a, uh, I'm pretty sure, based off of just public numbers, um, closed 5 sales June of last year, and I think he's closed 6 all this year. So this business is not easy, and people just certainly take advantage of one another and think that the success can come easy, and in reality it's not the case.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. So from there, it sounds like you had that vision of building the passive income. So as you're building your real estate career, you're having a lot of success. I imagine you're pretty profitable, at least in those years that you were a solo agent. You're reinvesting this into deals that you're finding along the way. How is that looking for you as you're kind of building this thing up to that 74 units?
Yeah, I mean, I have a YouTube channel, and I'm pretty transparent on my YouTube channel, just to not in a sense to like say, hey, look at me, but more or less love my father. But I learned very little financial literacy from him, just from the sheer fact that he didn't even tell his kids what he made. He didn't really explain the stock market. I know he has all his money in the stock. I didn't understand any of that. And obviously, as American citizens, for the most part, in school, I don't think there's a financial literacy class, right? So I had no knowledge of any of this stuff growing up, and even as an adult. So for more of the education, this maybe is a teacher in me, from an education standpoint, I want to let people know, like, the income that I'm generating, where's that income going, how real estate has changed my life, and from just a broad overview of my financial position. I could barely afford my bills when I first got licensed 6 years ago. I was a broke high school teacher living paycheck to paycheck. And I had very few bills. I had my car payment, rent, whatever I paid to feed my dog on a monthly basis, and food. That's the utilities. That's about all I have now. Fast forward now, if you were to look at my expenses, it's gross, because I do have mortgages for every single one of my properties. But you also look at the total amount of income that's being generated, and I actually did kind of a spreadsheet that showed my first year in real estate. I guess my first year of owning an investment property, I generated $14,000 from one investment property that I had acquired that year, in rental income. That's gross rental income, not net. And now fast forward, that was 2017, the second half of 2017, when I finally purchased my first property. Now you fast forward to 2023, and over the course of, these last 6 years, yes, I've been essentially over leveraging myself, probably being a little bit too aggressive when it comes to putting money aside. But I knew that the money I'm generating now is money that who knows how long I'm going to be able to generate this money. And if there is a day, whether it be tomorrow, next year, 5 years, 10 years, if I stop generating the kind of income I have now, I want to have something to show for it. And fast forward to 2023, and 2024 is probably going to be substantially more. I'm at projected $275,000 in gross rent this year from my properties. Next year, I would take a hard bet that we're going to be pushing, or I'm going to be pushing $350,000 a year in gross rent. So you're talking, if all my rental properties in 20 years, 20, 30 years just get paid off and I'm retired, if I never buy another property and all I do is I pay off my mortgages, I'm 34 right now. I could be 60 and, be sitting on north of $400,000 a year in just rent that I can collect and live off of. And I'll be honest, it's going to be hard for me not to buy another property over the next 30 years. So you can only imagine where, that type of income, again, it's rentals for me are not now, they're long term. They're, a retirement plan for me. But even beyond that, I've been given stock from my brokerage that's in the six figures. I have multiple six figures in my retirement account. And then, the substantial amount of equity that I have in the properties that I've bought right now, I've gone from living paycheck to paycheck to being, having more than a couple $1 million in total net worth right now in 6 years.
That's amazing. So if you were kind of like giving advice to a new agent out there, or an agent that's kind of just getting started, like, multiple streams of income are super important. So like, what advice would you give to an agent on how they should kind of structure their finances to build out those multiple streams of income? Like, what should they focus on?
So, and this is coming from someone who obviously has splurged a little here and there over the last 6 years, and I have a couple nice things. But I'm certainly not materialistic to where, hey, if I've got the money, I need to spend it on something nice. My spending it on something nice is another rental property for the most part, right? And that's what I think people struggle with the most is if they're living paycheck to paycheck, they can't afford to buy anything special or nice or invest. If they get to a point where they get a raise, or they find a side hustle that's making them extra money, they're not smart enough or don't have enough discipline to set the money aside to accumulate an opportunity down the road. I mean, my parents are a prime example. I was the third child, and they owned a property at the time they lived in, and it was a 3-bedroom home. They moved to the house that I was born and raised in, and they still live today. But that house being 34, they moved out 34 years ago. It's been paid off twice. They've refinanced it twice. They've been able to buy a motorhome with it for the kids to be able to drive around the country. And they've refinanced it and been able to pay off the current house that they're living in. The tenant that's living there, I remember taking drum lessons from in middle school when I was 10, 11, 12. So that same tenant has been in there for multiple decades, paying rent, paying down a mortgage to essentially pay off the entire house almost twice. And that's one investment property.
Wow. That is incredible. So you would advise agents to get into the game of owning property rather than only just selling property?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously what catapulted my business, because the analogy that I use all the time when I'm talking to clients is, hey, if you've got kids, and a lot of my clients do, like, hey, your kid wants to learn how to play soccer. You're going to take them at 5, 6, 7 years old to their first soccer practice. How are you going to feel if you're paying soccer coach to teach your kid how to play soccer, and you find out he's never played soccer, right? How pissed are you going to be? You're like, how can you possibly coach soccer if you've never even played it, right? Like, I've never played. I played soccer when I was 5, and I scored goals on my own team's goal, but not a person that's going to be coaching soccer, right? Certainly, I'm not going to take my kids to someone such as myself and expect them to coach them to play soccer. So when it comes to investing in real estate, I tell clients like, hey, I invest in real estate. I have multiple properties, both long-term, short-term, commercial, residential, in-state, out-of-state, Airbnb, just about anything and everything I've done. So there's that level of assurance knowing that, hey, I've been there, I've done it, I understand it, I've reaped the rewards of doing so, and I want to help you do it as well. So and for me, I truly believe there's not a safer investment than real estate.
Yeah, 100%. So you would start with the investment property, and then from there, would you stack anything else on top of it?
I mean, for step one, as far as direction to head, the easiest way is to just buy a property, and don't buy the nicest property on the street, not the nicest property in the area. Settle for something that maybe you could do some work to, but in the interim, if it's a single family, rent out the other rooms to friends that you're comfortable living with, or buy a duplex and rent out the other side.
Yes, 100%. Absolutely. So, investment property is huge. Now, you kind of just delve into a whole different kind of investing, which is Airbnb. And I know you just built out a really sick log cabin.
Yeah.
And it's more of the luxury Airbnb route. So going into that, like what kind of lessons have you learned? And is it as lucrative as people say?
So yes and no. So I will tell you, there's a handful of scenarios that can really differ. So me and this person in this particular situation, I have almost an 8% interest rate because I recently did a cash out refi. Technically, I was going to incur like a 10% commercial note. It was going to be a massive mortgage, so I had to refinance. I wanted to refinance, take the cash out as well, but it's not cash flowing what we would call tremendously. But I have a locked in interest rate on that property over the next 30 years, and I'm comfortable with where the mortgage is now. But if rates do go back down, whether they go, because I'm at 7.8, 7.5. Now, if it goes down to 7, if it goes down to 6.5, 6, there's going to come a point where, I'm going to be making a lot more money on the property because I'm able to refinance down to a lower rate. But if I don't, I'm still comfortable with where it is now. But the reason why I'm comfortable investing in such a high-end property, and my mortgage is $6,300. I'm comfortable paying that $6,300 mortgage because I generate the type of income that I do. And I also know that this particular property generates a lot of income being a short-term rental. I would not be comfortable with a $6,300 mortgage back as my first investment property. This is now my 9th or 10th investment property, so I've scaled up to here. But this is not obviously where one would start.
Okay, so you kind of view the short-term rentals as more of like a high risk, high reward type of investment.
Yeah, it can, on the flip side too, there's a lot of people out there doing Airbnb arbitrage, which is just a complete gamble. I'm not a fan of that. But the beauty with a short-term rental too is if you purchase something with intent to short-term rent it and it doesn't do well, you can always just flip it around and turn it into a long-term rental. It doesn't, I would never buy something with the sole intention of it only being serviceable for a short-term rental.
That makes sense. Okay. And with Airbnb, I've heard there's been a big turn down in bookings and all that stuff. Is that more a myth or is there some truth to that?
No, there's definitely some truth. I have a short-term rental here in Dallas that's more or less for just couples or single traveler coming in. It's just a bedroom and a bathroom. I've seen a slowdown there. Just people traveling to Dallas. This is a more of a destinational area that's going to continue to people that are spending $1,500, $1,800 a night for a large cabin that sleeps 19 people. They are not hurting by any means as far as funds.
That's true. It's a whole different segment. That makes a lot of sense. Now, when you decided to jump into this, were you concerned that it was going to take away from your real estate business and sales because you're kind of in a sense running a mini hotel?
Yeah, I initially actually wanted to try to do it myself, and then it didn't take long for me to realize I just said, you know what, here's property manager, take care of it. So I've got a co-host that I pay 15% to, and she handles 99% of the work, which, I think I wind up paying her $1,000, $1,500 a month or so, and it saves me all the time in the world. So it's money well spent.
Oh, that's great. Okay. So when you first started and you started doing it yourself, like what were the things that you had to do on a daily basis to keep this thing running?
So this actually just went live in the middle of June. Initially, I wanted to, I had to generate the whole, listing itself with proper descriptions, and I'm an analytical guy. I'm not the best with words. So, proper pictures, getting it staged, having someone be up there too. Like, it's 3.5 hours away from me. It's not something that I just drive down the road to and can address things. So we didn't even go live. Like, I didn't even go live on my own. I started doing it on my own and realized this is going to take way too long. So just hired a co-host, and from day one, I've had a co-host.
Wow. Okay. Now, how did you actually find and go about picking a co-host?
This is we go back to social media. There's Facebook groups for this particular area called Broken Bow, Oklahoma, where there's people installing windows, handyman, property managers, real estate agents, lenders, whatever you may need. They've got referrals within this group. I just did a lot of research into which direction I wanted to go with the co-host, negotiated price, and we've been working together since.
That's awesome. Now, you're a more analytical guy, so I'm assuming that you looked into multiple different markets. So what made you pick Broken Bow? And also on top of that, what should people be looking for if they're going to do the same thing in a market?
So this was my first investment property that was I guess outside of my particular house. I understood that a little bit of it was personal, meaning, so I lived in a duplex. I lived in a duplex, lived in a single family, and flipped it while I lived in it. Lived in a fourplex, then built my own home that I'm living in still today. But I built it with a additional bedroom and an Airbnb downstairs, so I could have a roommate and have an Airbnb paying it, and it pays the majority of my mortgage. I then bought two single family rentals, one in Fort Worth and one in South Dallas. I then sold a property and upgraded to a commercial building. And then I sold in my duplex for the Broken Bow cabin. The Broken Bow cabin, though, I knew I was going to own. Like, if prices go up like crazy on one of my properties and it makes sense to sell, I'm going to sell. I mean, it's just a numbers game. The Broken Bow cabin, though, is something that I'm at. It's an investment property that I'm at a far enough stage along the progression of my portfolio that I felt comfortable making investment property that isn't entirely all in investment, I guess you could say. Like, I'm going to be able to go up there when I have a wife and kids. We're going to be able to go up there. It's a great place that I can take my dogs to, which was really been something I felt bad for over the last 6 years. Is I've been hustling and grinding and working my butt off, and kind of my dogs have gotten the short end of the stick. So this allows them to go up and have a tremendous time at the cabin. But on top of that too, it can be used over the next 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 years with my family. I could grow old and have family reunions at that cabin. So not every investment property has to be just a cash flowing, make me money rental property. It would be ideal, but I was talking earlier about how I don't have a lot of flashy things. This is my flashy thing, right? My flashy thing is an investment property that pays my mortgage every single month, and sometimes the cash flow is better than it does. But in July, it was my birthday. We went up to the cabin for 2 nights with my family, so it provides me with that opportunity. We were able to go out on the lake and go boating and enjoy a couple nights at the cabin, and that's something that I'm going to be able to do for the foreseeable future.
That's awesome. Now, I do have a question about that because I've been looking at lake property up north in New Hampshire to do Airbnb. So it sounds like you have a lake near yours, and then is there a dock that is also? Yeah. So with that being said, do you provide a boat or a jet ski, or is that something they have to bring and drop in themselves?
No, I have connections for just about everything in the area. Like, I don't even own a boat. I rented a boat for the day. But I can also say right outside my front door is ATV trails. It's one of the things that we highlight being up on top of a mountain is you can literally, turn the corner and be on a bunch of ATV trails. And this is another thing too, long term, when I start to have kids and raise a family is, we're going to eventually have our boats stay up there, or get a boat and have our boat stay up there and get ATVs and leave them up there. This potentially could be, a source of income that we generate down the road, but there's I just know there's a lot of liability when it comes to, renting out a boat to someone else. But it goes back to the same thing, like the house that I'm living in. I don't love the price point that I bought this house for, being a single guy at the time, but I offset it with a roommate and an Airbnb. I don't probably love the cost of buying a brand new or used boat, but maybe I'll rent it out to guests at my cabin and offset that income, and give it a good look in terms of liability behind that. But that could be an option down the road.
That's awesome. Okay. So before we wrap up, Casey, what things are you going to do moving forward to build out your real estate empire and kind of expand what you've already built on?
Yeah, so a lot of this year has been stomaching a few, the tailwind of all the costs that I incurred with the team. Had another personal situation that cost me a little bit, and then the cabin itself was not cheap at all. I think after the loan, after the entire construction process has been done. So we're talking upgrades, which one was a substantial upgrade. I added an entire loft to the main living area, which allowed it to sleep 3 more people, and added a bathroom. That was $40,000. I upgraded the countertops. I upgraded the showers. I bought a pool spa in the back. I bought a hot tub, and I furnished the entire thing, which is 3,500, north of 3,500 square feet. And we're talking, nice furniture. So tallying all that up, I've basically been out of pocket $200,000. So now the downside, or the positive side of that, I guess you could say, is they're all expenses, and I can write them off as far as the income generated on the property. But a lot of this year has been playing catch up. So probably the rest of the year I'm just going to be, especially with the real estate market slowing down, kind of just playing it safe, building a nest egg of funds, and being a little bit more comfortable, because as I mentioned earlier, I probably was a little overzealous with investing over the last 5 years, just been a little bit more aggressive than I want to be. So just be a little bit more on the saving side of things. Also, taxes suck. So
Yeah.
is what it is there. But moving forward long term though, obviously, like everyone, I hope rates go down, because it makes it a lot more difficult for an investment property to make sense. So we'll see what happens in the next 12 to 24 months with interest rates. But, if something makes sense, something makes sense.
Exactly. That makes total sense. Well, hey, Casey, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. You dropped a lot of great knowledge, and you have an awesome rest of your week.
All right. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Casey.
Bye.
Hi, my name is Chris with the Empire Real Estate YouTube channel. On this channel, we talk about real estate entrepreneurship and building your real estate empire. If you like that kind of content, smash the like button and subscribe. If you did enjoy the podcast, make sure to check out our entire playlist from the Coffee with Closers podcast, where you can see all the episodes we've done so far. I hope you enjoy it.